Now, the Prime Minister would have at least can speak for 2 hours. The Minister of Finance, the leader of the opposition too, would also have 2 hours. But of course, we know the House is controlled by one party. The Prime Minister is about to address the House.
Because I get no extra time, and the leader of the opposition certainly cannot be smiling also. Mr. Speaker, I stand to move the following motion in my name. I beg to move the following motion, Mr. Speaker, which reads as follows. Whereas it is necessary to provide for the state of Grenada for the year 2016 by means of an appropriation act, be it resolved that the estimates for the year 2016 be approved.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the estimate of revenue and expenditure for the fiscal year 2016 be approved.
Mr. Speaker, as this motion is a money motion, I signal that I have the consent of the Governor General to proceed. But before doing so, Mr. Speaker, I wish to acknowledge that our nation has recently lost a cultural and sporting stalwart in the person of Kenneth Tiloti Hood. We therefore extend our profound condolences to his family and to his many friends and admirers. He has left a positive legacy, Mr. Speaker, on the many lives he has touched. Mr. Speaker, 2015 has been a year of solid progress and very encouraging results. In January, we witnessed the historic and unprecedented signing of the social protocol by our social partners. In May, our Parliament enacted unprecedented fiscal responsibility legislation, a rarity in the Caribbean. Mr. Speaker, several major projects commenced or were completed this year. Earlier this month, Grenada concluded debt restructuring with the external commercial creditors and the Paris Club. In the sporting arena, Mr. Speaker, Kerani James, Grenada's premier athletics ambassador, continues to make us all proud. Also, Lewis Hamilton, whose grandfather is Grenadian, was again crowned Formula One champion. Damian Daniel secured his third regional bodybuilding championship in 2015. Grenada's swimming team won the OECS Swimming Championship. And then came, Mr. Speaker, the revelation that Grenada has the sweetest honey in the world. I therefore congratulate Valma Jessamy, Dr. and Jerry Edwin on their outstanding achievement of the gold medal at the International Beekeepers Competition. And to note, Mr. Speaker, that honey is coming from Boucherjou. Mr. Speaker, as a nation, we have made tremendous strides on our journey to fiscal and debt sustainability and economic recovery. I therefore express my profound gratitude to all the Grenadian people for their sacrifices, their prayers, and support, which have helped us to navigate this important period in our nation's history. It is therefore a celebration, Mr. Speaker, of unity and tenacity. It is a story of us as a people coming together, making sacrifices, and now beginning to see and receive the benefits of our collective efforts. As I reflect on the road we have traveled together this past year, I am drawn to a portion of the scripture in Daniel chapter 11, verse 32, the King James Version, which reads, and I quote, "But the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits," end quote. Mr. Speaker, the theme chosen for the 2016 budget is as follows: moving forward together and delivering results. This theme, Mr. Speaker, speaks to the progress we are now making, having come together and put Grenadian first, at least most of us. At the outset, I am pleased to confirm that this budget has no new taxes. I'm also pleased, Mr. Speaker, to note that this budget has several positive firsts. Consistent with our approach to economic management and requirements under the Fiscal Responsibility Law, we are accompanying this statement with a presentation of a budget framework paper. This is found in Annex 1 of this document. As an expression of our focus on results and our commitment to be more accountable to our nation, you will observe, Mr. Speaker, in the estimates of revenue expenditure, the performance information for each ministry and department. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the international and regional developments. The international and regional economic developments. Recent performance, Mr. Speaker, of the global economy, according to the IMF's World Economic Outlook of October 2015, global growth is projected to reach 3.1%, slightly higher than last year's 3.4%. The outlook states, and I quote, in an environment of declining commodity prices, reduced capital flows to emerging markets, and pressure on their currencies, an increase in financial market volatility, downside risks to the outlooks have risen, particularly for emerging market and developing economies, unquote. Mr. Speaker, the strongest rebound remains in the United States. There has been modest recovery in the euro area and a return to positive growth in Japan. Growth in China, the world's second largest economy, has decelerated and is projected to be 6.8%. Growth in the United Kingdom is projected to be solid, but at a slower pace. In 2016, Mr. Speaker, the global economy is projected to grow slightly faster than at 3.6%. Performances of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. In respect of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, Mr. Speaker, growth in 2015 is projected to be 1.9%, with tourism leading the way. And based on this projection, growth at 5.1% will again record one of the strongest performances in the ECC Union. I repeat, 5.1%. More details on the performances of the global economy, CARICOM, and the ECC Union are available in Annex 2 of this statement. Update, Mr. Speaker, on BICO and CLICO situation. Mr. Speaker, our government remains very concerned about the hardships being experienced by policy holders of BICO and CLICO, who are yet to recover their investments. We are especially concerned, Mr. Speaker, about senior citizens whose pensions are not being paid at a time they are most in need. We will continue, Mr. Speaker, to work with regional governments on this issue, and will do all in our power to help the situation. In that regard, I've already raised this with the new government of Trinidad and Tobago. Our government, Mr. Speaker, therefore also supports the private initiative recently taken by citizens to establish the British American Insurance and CLICO Policy Holders Association to pursue the recovery of policyholders' investments. Domestic economic developments. Mr. Speaker, the economic performance and prospects. Based on the preliminary data, the Grenadian economy is projected to record a real GDP growth, as I said before, of 5.1%, following a revised growth rate of 5.7% in 2014. This result can be said to be much faster than originally projected. Therefore, for the third consecutive year, Grenada's growth rate will exceed the ECC Union average of 1.9%. The main drivers of this growth, Mr. Speaker, are construction, agriculture, tourism, and education. After contracting in 2014, construction has rebounded very well indeed. In sum, growth is becoming more broad-based, Mr. Speaker. More people are beginning to feel it. Still a lot left, not feeling it, but more feeling it. According to the preliminary results of 2015 Labor Force Survey, we don't make up numbers, Mr. Speaker, I'll give you the real thing. The rate of unemployment in Grenada is now 30.4%, slightly up from the 28.9% recorded in 2014. We say it as it is. This slight increase is due to a higher labor participation rate, as more persons, particularly women, are now seeking employment. today, Mr. Speaker, it's important to note, hope has returned. And as the economy improves, more and more people are seeking work and finding work. A very good sign indeed. The number of persons employed, Mr. Speaker, and that's the point, has increased from 37,365 to 41,046 in 2014, an increase of 3,681 persons, while the percentages increased. Inflation, as by the Consumer Price Index, fell by 1.3% for the first 6 months of this year. The main reason, Mr. Speaker, must be the reason given the fall in oil prices, which led to decreases in the price of electricity, water, and fuel. More details of this information are contained in the preliminary economic and fiscal review for 2015, which can be found in Annex 2 of this document. Mr. Speaker, for 2016, our economy is projected to grow by at least 3%. Fiscal performances, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, government's fiscal position has indeed significantly improved. This year, Grenada will achieve its first primary surplus, that's budget balance less interest payments, in over a decade. End of this fiscal year, we expect the following fiscal results. Current revenues of $550.4 million compared to a target of $545.4 million. Grants of $72.1 million compared to a target of $214.1 million. Current expenditure of $470.8 million compared to a target of $482.7 million. Capital expenditure of $199.0 million compared to a target of $313.3 million. The area of the 2015 budget, Mr. Speaker, which has not met our expectation and for obvious reasons, is grants from the National Transformational Fund under the Citizenship by Investment Program. We've been absolutely careful. Though constrained, Mr. Speaker, capital expenditure is projected $36.5% lower than the budgeted expenditure of $313.2 million. For the second consecutive year, Mr. Speaker, both the Customs and Excise Division and the Inland Revenue Division will exceed their targets, and this is revolutionary. Customs and Excise is projected to collect $260.8 million compared to its target of $237.8. This is above $23.0 million above. The Inland Revenue is projected to collect $258.4 million compared to its target of $253.6, $4.8 million above projection. Mr. Speaker, it is very clear that government is putting its fiscal house in order. Lest we forget, Mr. Speaker, the monthly shortfall peaked at $18 million before we commenced the homegrown program. For the first 10 months of this year, the average monthly shortfall was down to $1 million. Unpaid claims, Mr. Speaker, which we met when we took government, which were $110 million on arrival in office, has now been slashed. By year end, we project that unpaid claims over 60 days will be zero. Zero, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through you, to fellow Grenadians, these results are yours. It is imperative, therefore, that we all stay on course and move forward together to deliver even better results in the future. Public debt and debt restructuring. As of December 31st, Mr. Speaker, 2015, the total public sector debt is projected to be $2.7 billion, or 103.6% of GDP, broken down as follows. Central government debt, $2.2 billion. Government guarantees, $126.9 million. Other public sector debt, $378.4 million. The stock, therefore, of government guarantees fell in the past year to $126.9 million from $128.9 million, a reduction of $2 million. The public debt to GDP ratio is expected to fall from $109.1 million in 2014 to $103.6 million in 2015. Reflecting in part the effect of the restructuring on the commercial debt. At the completion, Mr. Speaker, of the debt restructuring, the debt to GDP ratio is projected to fall to 89.5%. Mr. Speaker, there are some persons who continue to proclaim that this government is not paying its debts. Speaker, this is a blatant untruth. It's intended to make the previous administration look good and the current administration to look bad. Mr. Speaker, this year alone, Grenada has already made debt payments of $299.4 million. It should be noted, Mr. Speaker, that these payments include $3.7 million paid to Taiwan. The previous administration did not pay 1 cent to Taiwan during its entire term period in office. The public may recall that not only did the previous administration fail to pay Taiwan, but it could not even negotiate a settlement or even attempt to do so. As a result, the assets of both the Airports Authority and the Ports Authority were under serious threat. Mr. Speaker, it was this administration which resolved this long-standing problem. Mr. Speaker, therefore, to see that this is another very good manifestation of the government delivering results. Further details on the public debt can be found in Annex 7 and 8 of this document. Debt restructuring. Today, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to state that Grenada has now regularized its relations with most of its creditors. Earlier this month, the formal agreement with external commercial creditors was completed. Last week, agreement was reached with the Paris Club. As a consequence of the restructuring, the debt per capita basis has been reduced by $3,200 for every citizen in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, this is a major step to reduce Grenada's debt and places Grenada on a path to achieve a debt-to-GDP ratio of 60% by 2020, which is our goal. For the international bonds, the first half of the haircut, 25%, was implemented immediately. The creditors will await the final IMF review scheduled for June 2017 before providing the second haircut of 25%. Mr. Speaker, there are some key points in this agreement which I wish to share with our nation. Government's negotiation of a 50% reduction is crucial before accounting for capitalization of accrued and past interests. It represents, Mr. Speaker, a major accomplishment by historical standards. Indeed, only a minority of sovereign debt restructurings has achieved a principal reduction. And never has a repeat bond restructuring by a middle-income country achieved a 50% reduction. Secondly, the phasing of the debt reduction was insisted upon by the creditors because of the collapse of the IMF program under the previous administration. Mr. Speaker, this nation must not forget the misdeeds of the previous administration. This including abandoning the IMF program in 2011, lacking the courage to proceed with debt restructuring, even if their own cabinet agreed to do so, and I have the cabinet conclusion. Thirdly, selling national assets left, right, and center to pay salaries at the end of the month. Shutting down the parliament for more than 7 months and refusing, despite a heavy campaign, to implement the integrity in public life legislation. Mr. Speaker, the bad governance by the previous administration eroded Grenada's credibility for upfront relief. They would never have got it. However, Grenada is now overperforming under the current program and on track for timely completion. Mr. Speaker, before I continue, let me make this point. There is no doubt in my mind that Grenadians are making enormous sacrifices However, it's secret. There are some elements that are hoping and predicting that not only will the homegrown program fail, but that government will not have the discipline to complete this program. Some of the noises, Mr. Speaker, of those elements is not about poor people in this country, but about that desperation for power at all costs. They have been hoping that government will abandon the program and lose all the benefits for the people of Grenada. I say to this beautiful nation, we have come too far to turn back now. Too far. Let us continue to move forward, holding hands together. Even those who don't want to hold our hands, we still hold their hands. Mr. Speaker, in addition, tell me, which Grenadian really wants to go back to the days of infighting inside cabinet? Indecisiveness, joblessness, hopelessness, and mounting unpaid claims, and plummeting investor confidence? Not one. I now wish to address the restructuring of government debts to the National Insurance Scheme. Interesting one. Mr. Speaker, following initial discussions with the NIS, it was agreed that there will be no haircut on government debts to the NIS. I repeat, no haircut. Subsequently, government and the NIS agreed that government will repay all bonds over a period of 25 years at an interest rate of 3%. Furthermore, after the first 10 years, government will pay both principal and interest on these bonds. We therefore wish, Mr. Speaker, thank all who have worked to show this, specifically the labor unions and the NIS board, for their partnership in this regard. Mr. Speaker, they understand that when the economy grows, NIS will grow. When employment increases, NIS becomes stronger. Mr. Speaker, the leadership of the opposition forces making some wild, I don't want to use it, but I have to say reckless allegations that government is not paying contributions to the NIS. Very interesting one. About open or jump out. Here are the facts, Mr. Speaker. On the arrival in office in February 2013, the government's arrears of contribution to the NIS was $24.2 million, all mostly created by the previous administration. Bad pay. At the end of October 2015, these arrears, taking on our responsibility, had been reduced to $20.1 million, paying over $4-something million of the former government's arrears. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the government has paid contribution to the NIS every month for the last 33 months of government. So I don't know, Mr. Speaker, where this statement comes from that we not paying contributions. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, government has entered into a payment plan with the NIS to clear up all arrears made by previous governments. Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is that this government has paid $68.8 million in cash to the NIS since we returned to office in 2013. Facts are there for all to see. Does anyone, Mr. Speaker, anyone recall how much the previous administration took from the NIS? Do we recall that? They took, Mr. Speaker, a sum of $162.1 million in just 4.5 years. They stay in office too long, NIS gone. Mr. Speaker, some people, unless they are shameless, should not even mention the word NIS. If I was in their place, I ain't talking NIS at all. I might call it SIN, sin. Then again, Mr. Speaker, they are so accustomed to telling untruths that it has become part of their nature to do so. I say no more. I could have said something and then call another one. Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't do this. This is a budget presentation. Mr. Speaker, that said, I wish to reiterate the government of Grenada's full and absolute commitment to the long-term viability of the national insurance scheme. The onus is on government and all citizens to manage well after the homegrown program is over. In this regard, the fiscal responsibility law will be very important indeed. We wish to acknowledge the Conference of Churches and the religious community in general in Grenada, and the Jubilee campaign for the continual advocacy for debt relief for Grenada. We also recognize, Mr. Speaker, the support of our social partners and the cooperation of all creditors. Most of all, we thank the Grenadian people for their sacrifices. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the estimates of revenue and expenditure for 2016. For 2016, Mr. Speaker, the Budget and Finance Summary says the following. The 2016 estimates of revenue and expenditure provide for total expenditure, including repayments, of $1 billion, and a real billion this time, $125,607,770, Mr. Speaker. Real money. The overall budget, Mr. Speaker, is summarized as follows. Recurrent revenue, $574.6 million. Recurrent expenditure, $481.2 million. Current account surplus of $93.4 million. A primary surplus after grants of $103.5 million. Capital expenditure of $291 million. Principal repayments, amortization, $352.7 million. An overall surplus, Mr. Speaker, after grants of $0.2 million. Mr. Speaker, the 7 largest allocations by vote go as follows. Debt, $456 million, approximately 40.5% of total expenditure. The Ministry of Education and Human Resources, $102.1 million, 9.0% of total expenditure. The Ministry of Health, $75.7 million, 6.7% of total expenditure. The Ministry of Finance and Energy, $72.1 million, 6.4% of total expenditure. The Ministry of Works, $55.5 million, 4.9% of total expenditure. The Ministry of Youth and Sports, $53.7 million, 4.7% of total expenditure. Pensions and gratuities, $50.1 million, 4.5% of total expenditure. Recurrent revenues, Mr. Speaker, for 2016 are projected to be $574.6 million, approximately 9.5% more than the expected collections in 2015. Total capital expenditure for 2016 is projected at $201.6 million. Of this amount, $78.2 million is projected to come from local sources, $198.5 million from grants and the proceeds from the National Transformation Fund, and $15 million from external loan disbursements. Protecting the gains of a homegrown program. Fiscal responsibility, item 1, legislation. Mr. Speaker, as promised, our government took the unprecedented step and introduced fiscal responsibility legislation to Parliament earlier this year. This fiscal responsibility law, called FRL, will come into force on January 1st, 2016. The key objective of this FRL is to support the achievement and the maintenance of a debt-to-GDP ratio of 55%. In order to bring down the debt-to-GDP ratio to 55%, the FRL, that's a law, mandates, 1, the rate of growth of expenditure by central government, and covered also public entities shall not exceed the growth rate of revenue. We are managing also, Speaker. Secondly, expenditure on the wage bill shall not exceed the equivalent of 9% of GDP. Salary negotiations must be concluded prior to the year in which adjustments are expected to take effect, thereby eliminating the need for back pay, which could have the effect of disrupting fiscal operations. Another item, no multi-year commitments could be entered into during periods in which Parliament is dissolved. The FRL, Mr. Speaker, also establishes a fiscal responsibility oversight committee, an independent body, which will be responsible for monitoring compliance with the provisions of the Act and reporting annually to Parliament. The attrition policy, that's personnel and expenditure control. Mr. Speaker, lest we forget, before the start of our homegrown program, government was spending 70 cents of every dollar collected on wages and salaries and pensions. Clearly, the wage bill, not the public debt, was the single largest government expenditure. In dialogue with unions representing the public servants, government agreed to wage restraint during the homegrown program. In the dialogue also with all the social partners, government also agreed not to proceed with a drastic and devastating measure of retrenchment of public officers, which it was being advised to do. Given the decision not to retrench workers, government has had to find ways to manage the public service wage bill. In this regard, government approved the attrition policy, which provides for no more than 3 persons to replace every 10 persons who retire from or exit the public service. Mr. Speaker, at the end of June 2015, the size of the public service was 5,879 persons compared to 6,166 as of December 31st, 2014, representing a decrease of 287 persons. In 2015, the proportion of every dollar of revenue spent on wages and salaries and pensions has fallen from 70 cents to 48 cents, Mr. Speaker. It should be noted, Mr. Speaker, that an exception was made to the attrition policy to regularize 205 temporary teachers, Mr. Speaker. Permission was also granted for the Ministry of Health to fill 24 vacancies, 16 of which were nurses. Waste reduction in non-personal expenditure item. Mr. Speaker, government has set a target of reducing non-personal expenditure by 20% over 2012 spending. For the first 10 months of 2015, we achieved a reduction of 13% or saved $1.4 million. After intensive negotiations, an agreement was reached and signed with Digicel for the provision of fixed line and internet communications. This agreement will be implemented in 2016, and it is expected to save Grenada $3 million per year. Improving tax administration, Mr. Speaker. Consistent with government's commitment to make the Inland Revenue Division a modern tax service, the Large and Medium Taxpayers Unit was recently established. We anticipate, Mr. Speaker, that this unit will make it easier for taxpayers to do business with the Inland Revenue and would also lead to improved revenue collection. Stronger oversight of statutory bodies. Mr. Speaker, this year, for the first time, the Minister of Finance issued a letter of expectations to all statutory bodies, inclusive of reporting guidelines for performance and management and accountability. Subsequently, all statutory bodies were given guidelines for compensation. As a consequence, reporting and oversight are improving. The monitoring of these new arrangements, Mr. Speaker, will be strengthened even further next year. Financial summary of all statutory bodies is provided in Annex 10 of this document. Mr. Speaker, now turn to investing in our people and protecting our vulnerable. So I start with education and human resource development. Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to helping our citizens become more productive and competitive in the global economy. The integration of ICT in the delivery of various education services has elevated the quality of education offered to our nation's children. At the primary level, there has been a significant improvement in the performances in the minimum competency tests in mathematics and language arts, and in the Caribbean primary exit assessment in the component of mathematics. As per government's stated commitment, 205 teachers have now received their letters of permanent appointment as a first step in the regularization processes for teachers who have been temporarily employed for so many years. Mr. Speaker, we are continuing to deliver on our promises of more scholarships. For the academic year of 2015-2016, a total of 109 scholarships have been awarded. These scholarships are aligned to the national priority training needs and include the following sectors: health, education, agriculture, ICT, and tourism. The total value of this scholarship, Mr. Speaker, is $37.8 million. Furthermore, we recently secured funds to the tune of $200,000 from one of our investors to ensure that our young people who are pursuing education can meet the gap between the scholarships or support services and personal funds. In the last 3 months alone, dozens of young people have received assistance from this fund. This year, as part of government's continuous improvement of facilities for students and teachers, several schools were refurbished or upgraded. For example, the St. David's Catholic Secondary School, the expansion of T.A. Marishall Community College, the expansion of the Grenada Boys Secondary School, the expansion of McDonald College. In the case of GBSS and McDonald, they now have additional facilities for technical and vocational education. These new facilities will serve, Mr. Speaker, not just their students, but persons in the private sector from those areas who wish to improve their earning capacity. Without a doubt, Mr. Speaker, our government is, in fact, delivering. For 2016, the allocation for education is $102.1 million. Youth and sports development. Mr. Speaker, our government knows full well that if we lose our youth, our country has no future. Consequently, we make no apology for a major investment in our youths through the new Imani program. That said, since we are not infallible, we will continue to take on board any suggestion that can improve the program and enhance the nation's return on this significant investment. We need all the help you can give us. In direct support of job creation, government will continue to promote youth entrepreneurship. An allocation of $200,000 has been provided for the Youth Entrepreneurs Fund. Government is also desirous of partnering with the Junior Achievement Program to support the development of the most promising businesses after the students exit the program. Thanks to the generosity of the People's Republic of China, Grenada will soon take delivery of the state-of-the-art athletics and football stadium that some said we should not build. And today they're praising it. Thank God. Next year will be the exciting as possible, as Grenada hosts several major tournaments, including Intercol, Winwood Island Secondary School Games, Carifta, and the FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup. Through a public-private partnership between the National Lotteries Authority and the Canadian banknote, we'll soon see the lighting of the Nashville Stadium. This development will pave the way, Mr. Speaker, for us to enjoy national and international cricket and other sports at night. The lighting of the fun playing field is nearing completion, and that is funded by FIFA. Other facilities being lit are the Lassages and Bouchejou playing fields. In addition, Mr. Speaker, government has allocated $4 million to light other facilities. It is our hope, Mr. Speaker, that the lighting of facilities will not just provide opportunities for entertainment and family activities, but would also encourage more active and healthy lifestyles. Several other sporting facilities, such as Cuthbert Peters Park in St. John's, will be upgraded, and the Vendome basketball court will again finally be rebuilt. This budget for youth and sports provide for $53.7 million, of which $31.4 million is for administration delivery of the MANI program. Healthcare, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, health affects all of us, and it behoves all of us to come together to address issues of our health system. We need all of us, because any one of us can be expected to use the facilities sometime. Many of the issues of the healthcare system are not unique to Grenada. Only last week, Mr. Speaker, the OECS heads of government agreed to adopt a regional approach to lower costs for the provision of certain services. Despite the many challenges, the healthcare is definitely improving, although we have still a long way to go. Mr. Speaker, has anyone forgotten the millions of dollars, and I was reminded of this as I chaired the OECS meeting last week in Dominica, that were owed the OECS pharmaceutical services during the reign of the previous administration, as a consequence of which basic medicines were unavailable to us through that system. Today, Mr. Speaker, I am amazed that the same people can be seen prancing around and making the most noise about the state of healthcare in Grenada. Since February 2013, millions of dollars of outstanding bills have been paid, and basic medication is in more regular supply. It was, in fact, identified at the heads meeting that by the end of 2008, Grenada and St. Lucia was the best paying customers to the pharmaceutical program. By 2013, we were by far the worst. In addition, Mr. Speaker, there have been significant donations for which we are thankful to our citizens at home and abroad. Through the donation desks of the Ministry of Health. Several actions have been taken this year, including the following. We'll say it as it is, Mr. Speaker. Where we fall short, we'll also say so. One, the completion of the National Strategic Plan for Health 2016 to 2025. Development and implementation of policies and procedures for system-wide quality improvement. Approval of the National Primary Health Program, healthcare policy, and the enactment of the Food Safety Law. Preparatory works, Mr. Speaker, continues for the introduction of the National Health Insurance. I now wish to highlight some of the improvements of our health infrastructure. Work continued on phase 2 of the General Hospital with grant funding from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Already more than $4 million have been spent with the following results. The I ward has been refurbished and was recommissioned last month. The famous steel structure has been adjusted to 4 levels and will accommodate accidents and emergencies. In the laboratory area, imaging unit and outpatient clinics are now there. The children's ward has also been repaired. The isolation unit, which has 4 rooms with a private ward, has been retrofitted to accommodate infectious disease patients. The services in the operating theaters and the intensive care unit have been boosted by the installation of cardiology equipment, and this service is now being provided at the General Hospital in collaboration with the St. George's University. A new chiller unit has been purchased and installed at the General Hospital to store fruits and vegetables and reduce wastage. The gynecology ward is now 75% completed. The refurbishment works of almost $300,000 is funded by the National Lottery Authority. The doctor's quarters, through the assistance from Friends of the Hospital, was remodeled, furnished, and Wi-Fi, internet, and TV access upgraded. Repairs have also been effected at the Mongetal and the Richmond Home for the Elderly. At Princess Alice Hospital, the X-ray building has been completed by the Benjamin Foundation and government. The X-ray machine was donated by Grenada and government. Furthermore, the incinerator has been repaired with support from Grenada and government and is now fully operational. Mr. Speaker, very importantly, the medical team at Princess Alice can now access laboratory results online, thereby facilitating faster diagnostic services and timely treatments also. Mr. Speaker, Grenada will receive approximately $5 million in grant funding from DFID through POW to retrofit 4 health facilities. These are Princess Alice Hospital, Princess Royal Hospital, the Central Medical Stores, and the Woburn Medical Station. Mr. Speaker, it is envisaged that the construction of the Grove Health Center will commence in 2016 from the European Union. Mr. Speaker, much has been said recently about the number of doctors and nurses at our health facilities. In this regard, the misunderstanding of the attrition policy is therefore unfortunate. Here are the facts. Just simply the facts. A total of 43 nurses and 9 doctors, including house officers, have been recruited this year. 17 specialist doctors have been contracted from Cuba to complement the current staff. These are just not our numbers. 3 medical laboratory technicians and 3 X-ray technicians will soon be returning from studies to complement our unit. 5 scholarships have been provided to doctors to pursue specialized training in areas including obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics and pathology, and they will be in Cuba and China. The budget provides, Mr. Speaker, for the hiring of more nurses and doctors next year. In fact, Mr. Speaker, bearing in mind the cries of dozens, Mr. Speaker, of qualified but unemployed nurses around the nation, the Cabinet has taken a decision recently to allow for the minister, through his ministry, to the chief nursing officers, a legislation that we take to Parliament to address their license to practice in the shortest possible time. This will be done before the end of this Parliament session. Nurses will soon be able to obtain a provisional license for practice through the ministry while they await the regional certification. Mr. Speaker, we acknowledge that the situation with the dialysis unit at the hospital is of grave concern. You're talking about life. And therefore, we won't hide our faults. Yes, we know that the previous administration dismantled the unit for petty political reasons. But, Mr. Speaker, the onus now falls on us, something about it. We now cannot keep blaming the previous administration or the private sector. As a government that has been in office for 2.5 years, we have a moral responsibility to solve this problem now. We have dropped the ball, and we have to take full responsibility for that. We say it as it is, Mr. Speaker. We will not lie. Therefore, I recently with the top officials from the Ministry of Health, and we have come up with an immediate plan to solve this problem so that we can save lives. And in meeting with Prime Minister Rowley of Trinidad and Tobago recently in October, we discussed several areas of partnership, of which healthcare was a key factor. Our 2-line ministries, it was agreed, will soon meet and chart the way forward for this important area. For now, we'll do what we can to restore the functionality of the dialysis unit in the shortest possible time so that patients can get the requisite care. Finally, Mr. Speaker, it must be noted that the Ministry of Religious Affairs has launched a chaplaincy program at the General Hospital aimed at providing prayer and counseling support, not just for patients, but also for nurses and doctors. Mr. Speaker, the foregoing results bear testimony for an honest and caring and hard-working government that says it as it is. I also express gratitude to all persons and organizations at home and abroad that are contributing to the improvements of our health care. The total allocation for health, Mr. Speaker, is $75.7 million, almost $12 million more than budgeted in 2015. Housing and social care. Mr. Speaker, the need for housing is huge and heavy on the minds of everyone in our population and all parliamentary representatives. As a consequence, earlier this year, government launched a $2 million soft loan program to help families with their repair and expansion needs. The sum of $4 million has been provided for this program next year. In our dialogue also with the labor unions, we have also heard the need for more and more better housing for public servants. In September of this year, our government, through the Grenada Development Bank, launched a salient special mortgage program primarily targeted at public servants. The bank is offering 100% financing to public servants, including land. Already the bank has approved 25 loans to the tune of approximately $5 million. In addition, there are approximately 59 loans in the pipeline with a total value of $11.6 million. Mindful of this dire need, Mr. Speaker, our government has authorized the bank to expand the special program with the attractive terms and offer. GDP program is assisting persons who cannot secure mortgages from the commercial banks. The bank would also adopt a more flexible policy for long-standing public servants who are on contract or do not yet have a permanent appointment. Following the distribution of homes to 350 families in Soubise, Frequenté, and Mangé this year, the second phase of the Chinese housing program will commence soon. This phase will provide homes for 660 families, constructed in Boucherjou in St. George's, Frequenté also in St. George's, Black Bay in St. John's, Diamond in St. Mark's, some areas in St. Patrick's, Dumfries in Carriacou. For 2016, Mr. Speaker, the allocation of the Grenada Home Improvement Program, which is called house repair, has been almost doubled to $6 million. Mr. Speaker, government again reiterates its commitment to ensure that the vulnerable and the poor are protected and supported, particularly so during the homegrown program. Therefore, the sum of $1 million is budgeted for uniform and transportation allowance as vital support to help our vulnerable children to regularly attend school. As a caring government, we continue to do our best to meet various needs, including educational and medical for the poor and vulnerable. In this regard, an allocation of $1.25 million has been provided for the Needy Assistance Program. After some implementation challenges, Mr. Speaker, the Management Information System will soon be ready for rollout, leading to better targeting of the most vulnerable children, families, and senior citizens. Government intends to spend $13.8 million under the flagship safety net program called Support for Education, Empowerment, and Development, otherwise known as SEED. Mr. Speaker, approximately $2 million have been set aside for the roving caregivers and geriatric program. At long last, Mr. Speaker, the Bacolet Juvenile Rehabilitation Center has been completed and will be officially opened early next year. Its operation will facilitate the implementation of the Juvenile Justice Act. The sum of $1 million has been allocated for the center's operations. The total allocation, Mr. Speaker, therefore, for housing and social development is $36.1 million, of which capital expenditure is $28.6 million. Mr. Speaker, I now move to creating jobs. Improving the investment climate is key. Mr. Speaker, again, Grenada's, this government will be honest with you. Grenada's fall in doing business ranking is unfortunate and unacceptable. It's one of the few statements of the opposition that we accept full responsibility for. The ranking and summary of key findings are shown in Annex 11. Several efforts were made to improve the investment climate over the past year, including the revision of tax incentives and the drafting of bankruptcy and insolvency legislation. Unfortunately, they were not completed in time to impact the rankings. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, our government accepts once again full responsibility for this shortcoming and will promise you that we will do better in going forward. I now wish to highlight two incentives which the business community can expect in 2016. First, the period for carrying forward of losses for businesses will be increased from 3 years to 6 years. Second, government is providing a tax deductible for training, including support for youth development programs. That is a necessary element. These new incentives, which will be rolled out in 2016, will cut the red tape, Mr. Speaker. Agriculture and fisheries. Agriculture and fisheries, as we all know, are vital for food and nutrition security, as well as for the economic well-being of this beautiful nation. To this end, a national agricultural plan has been developed in collaboration with the CARICOM Secretariat and financed by the European Union. The Zero Hunger Program will continue building on successes in 2015, which included the first Cassava Festival. In addition, Mr. Speaker, our government is very sympathetic to the plight of farmers who lost crops and income as a result of the recent heavy rains. As a consequence, we have allocated the sum of $1 million in an emergency relief fund to help affected farmers and in the event of similar losses in 2016. Mr. Speaker, this fund does not replace the need for crop insurance, which we will continue to pursue with regional and international partners. Mr. Speaker, also, The revamped Marketing and National Importing Board increased its purchases from farmers by 58% and paid out more than $5 million to farmers so far this year. Mr. Speaker, the scourge of predial larceny is real. However, we are beginning to see the results of the predial larceny control program. To date, more than 6,000 farmers have been registered and almost 4,600 ID cards issued. The task force is now sharing the database with the hotel industry and other buyers of agricultural produce. We are encouraging the task force to do random checks also on vendors and importers to ensure the trafficking of illegal agricultural produce will indeed be minimized or eliminated. The Farm Labor Program, Mr. Speaker, will resume in early 2016. The sum of $500,000 has been allocated. Government will continue to support the development of high-demand crops such as soursop. In this regard, the sum of $500,000 have been earmarked. Mr. Speaker, the plague of sargassum seaweed in the Caribbean has adversely impacted the livelihood of our fishermen. In collaboration with regional partners, efforts are now underway to develop an early warning systems, mitigation plans, and to explore commercial options, agricultural and medical, for the sargassum seaweed. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I've just returned from the OECS Heads of Government, where the decision was taken to implement a maritime research strategy that will incorporate comprehensive work on the sargassum seaweed. Greater attention will be given to improving fish quality and post-harvest technology to enhance returns from the industry and to maintain Grenada fish export status to the European Union. This effort, Mr. Speaker, will include more stringent measures for licensing. We are also working to enhance our fish export product and secure more airlift for our cargo and fish exports through an equipment upgrade at the airport. Government will also continue to strengthen the maritime protected areas to enhance the management of critical marine species and improve biodiversity. The Caribbean Regional Fisheries Co-Management Project, funded by Japan, will help farmers, Mr. Speaker, to improve their productivity and income. This project is being piloted on the East Coast in Grenville and is expected to be replicated in other fishing areas in our country. The total allocation for fisheries is $20.4 million. The total allocation for agriculture and fisheries is $42.2 million and includes of $32.9 million in capital expenditure. Tourism and culture. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt about the economic impact of tourism on Grenada's economy. For the first 9 months of this year, total arrivals grew by 4.1%, including an 8% increase in stayover arrivals. The economic assessment by the Tourism Authority and the Ministry of Finance of the test match played in Grenada last April revealed a spending power of nearly $16.3 million with 1,805 visitors. Mr. Speaker, our government understands that marketing is critical. I am pleased, therefore, to note that as a result of an improving fiscal situation, every effort will be made to ensure timely disbursement of the full $12 million earmarked in 2016. In collaboration with the OECS Commission, joint marketing was undertaken for yachting products and services in Canada and North America. Mindful of the urgent need to improve our tourism product, the following steps were taken during this year. Installation of a signage by the GTA throughout the country. Completion of the Bathway vending facilities. Enhancement of the existing trails and the development of new ones. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the commercialization of our sites did not proceed as quickly as planned. But having completed additional technical work, we will soon invite expressions of interest for the following sites: Fort George, Fort Frederick, Annandale Waterfalls, Grenada National Park, and others. These sites, Mr. Speaker, and let me emphasize, will neither be sold nor privatized. Instead, they will be leased under contract to capable firms and individuals. In this regard, I wish to announce that government has decided to relocate the headquarters of the Royal Grenada Police Force. Fort George is a tourism site. An alternative site has been identified and efforts are underway to mobilize funds to build an appropriate facility on that particular site. In respect of ELIF, Delta Airlines commenced flights out of Atlanta as well as an additional flight out of New York, thereby contributing to the increased arrivals from the United States. JetBlue also commenced operations to Grenada in June with 2 flights out of New York. JetBlue also has increased its service to 3 flights per week and plans to add a 4th flight in January 2016. Next year, we'd also expect to see the commencement of weekly service out of Panama, hopefully so. The allocation for airlift in 2016 is $8 million. Mr. Speaker, upgrades were complete at the Morris Bishop International Airport, including an airport operations center, a passenger security system and border management system. The VIP lounge also was refurbished and an airport executive lounge was established. Mr. Speaker, things are indeed looking up. As part of our fiscal responsibility, Mr. Speaker, government will proceed also with the amalgamation of Spice Mass Corporation and the Grenada Cultural Foundation in 2016. We expect earlier planning, marketing, and timely execution of Spice Mass, and our major cultural festival will be forthcoming. The Botanical Gardens, Mr. Speaker, will be renamed Sir Eric Matthew Gary Botanical Gardens in honor of our country's first Prime Minister. The total allocation, Mr. Speaker, for tourism and culture is $27.4 million. Energy development. The national energy policy is being reviewed and will be revised next year. During this year, government circulated drafts electricity supply bill and a public utilities regulatory commission bill. Furthermore, model licenses and most regulations have now been drafted. These laws are essential for electricity reforms and will be implemented next year. An initiative for solar street lights is also being pursued. The initial 3G study, Mr. Speaker, on Grenada's geothermal energy potential has been completed with support from New Zealand, and the additional baseline work is being done by Japan. Already, a roadmap for geothermal development has been developed and shared with key developmental partners. In 2016, Mr. Speaker, there will be several pilot projects for solarization of government buildings and retrofitting of air-conditioned units. In terms of exploration of oil and gas potential, cooperation will intensify with Trinidad and Tobago. Carriacou and Petit Martinique. The sister island of Carriacou and Petit Martinique continue to get their fair share of development, and it's been consistently articulated by the representative. This year, the Lauriston Airport was upgraded and made safer. Several roads were rehabilitated, and 2 desalination plants, including one in Petit Martinique and the other in Carriacou, were constructed. In 2016, key projects include roadworks, $2 million. The agricultural program, $1 million. Sports and culture support program, $1 million. Asphalt and concrete works, $450,000. Petit Martinique playing field, $400,000. The total allocation for Carriacou and Petit Martinique is $13.4 million, of which $4.4 million is earmarked for capital expenditure. Information and Communication Technologies, ICT. Mr. Speaker, under the Caribbean Regional Communication Infrastructure Program called CARCIP, a public-private partnership for the design and construction of a broadband network is expected to be completed within the next 18 months. Government has now formalized an agreement with MGRM after 1 year of on-site information gathering and assess the ICT needs of government by that company. Under the agreement, MGRM will implement the e-governance portal and e-governance platform components of the master governance framework as Grenada intensifies its drive to use ICT for economic transformation. Some of the priorities include paperless initiatives for Cabinet and Parliament, and more online services for the citizens of our country. Beginning in January, the police will be using a completely computerized system for managing vehicle licenses. Plans are also underway to allow vehicle owners to pay their vehicle license fees online. This new system, Mr. Speaker, will greatly reduce the long lines and waiting times involved in paying vehicle licenses fees each year. Trade and export development. Mr. Speaker, food imports account for 20% of total imports. This is highly unacceptable. Consequently, government will be working with the Grenada Poultry Association, among others, to reduce this bill to no more than 1% of total imports over the next 5 years. Government, through the Grenada Bureau of Standards, will continue to support export businesses and businesses with export potential. The sum of $250,000 has been allocated for the Bureau of Standards for this specific purpose. Government would also continue to support the export thrust of the Marketing and National Importing Board and its export strategy. Support for small business development. Mr. Speaker, by the end of December 2015, the Small Business Development Fund is projected to disburse $1.6 million, resulting in 325 jobs. The 2016 budget provides for an allocation of $4 million. When this is disbursed, in addition to those who are paying back for the loans, the likely impact is the creation of another 650 jobs. The Grenada Industrial Development Corporation anticipates that it will provide business advisory services to at least 20 small and medium-sized enterprises in 2016. Major government projects. Mr. Speaker, this budget provides for $291.6 million government's capital program in 2016. I now present some of these major projects. 1, the Grenada Houses of Parliament. The next phase of this project, that's the actual construction because earthwork has been completed, is expected to commence in January. An initial allocation of $10.1 million has been made. Based on information received subsequent to the meeting of the Standing Committee on Finance, this sum will be increased by an additional $3.4 million. The total cost of the Houses of Parliament is expected to be about $29 million, and it will be financed by the United Arab Emirates, the government of Mexico, and the government of Grenada. Completion of this important institution is expected to be in 2017. Road rehabilitation and maintenance programs. Mr. Speaker, we have begun to address the sorry state of our roads left for us in 2013. This budget provides for $5.5 million for asphalt works. A provision of $7 million has been made for road maintenance programs, including debushing. I therefore wish also to note that on the advice of the social partners, the debushing program will now take a slightly different face, including planting of flowers to further beautify our landscape. For 2016, another $5 million have been provided for concrete works such as roads, drainage, and retaining walls. These programs will again provide for short-term employment opportunities. Special projects. Special projects, Mr. Speaker, continues to be a very effective program to addressing the needs in our communities. In 2015, hundreds of projects have been implemented throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique at a cost of $4.2 million. This translated into 1,100 jobs being created at the community levels. This year, the allocation is $7 million. Construction and refurbishment of government buildings. Speaker, many government buildings are in dilapidated condition, while government over the years rents various facilities. This makes no financial sense. Consequently, government will commence a systematic program of repairing key government buildings. This will mean increased capital expenditure, but will reduce recurrent expenditure over time. The sum of $5 million is therefore budgeted. The Basic Needs Trust Fund, BNTF. Mr. Speaker, the BNTF program is another example of this government delivering results. Under education, Mr. Speaker, the following sub-projects will be implemented. The Paraclete Government School, the Bonnet Government School, the Monkmorris Anglican School, St. Dominic's Preschool, Victoria Resource and Daycare Center, St. Teresa's Vincent's Preschool, the Grove Daycare Center, Telescope Resource Center, the Marable Community Upgrade, skills training for rural folks, technical training for single parents, training in craft production and small engine repairs in Marquis, skills training for inmates, under water and sanitation, Mr. Speaker, the following sub-projects will be undertaken. The Davie Fishermen Locker Facility in St. Patrick's, the Loreto Toilet Facility, water tanks for 10 schools in St. Patrick's, Grand Roy Toilet Upgrade, the Wharf Lane in Grenville, Closure Water Treatment Phase 2. Under the Community Access and Drainage Program, the following sub-projects will be undertaken. The True Blue Road Avenue project in Telescope, the Chantamel Retaining Wall, the Lara La Pastora Road. Contracts have been and will soon be awarded for most of these projects, as they must be completed by the end of 2016. This program is projected to spend $7.8 million, and Mr. Speaker, all of this, in fact, are grants. Market Access and Rural Enterprise Development Project called MAREP. For 2016, Mr. Speaker, the following farm access roads and bridges will be done. Rosehill, Chambord, La Poterie Conference, Paul's Bridge, Ahoma Project, Fontaine and St. Mark's Road, Lower St. John's Road, Gut area, St. Andrews, Munda Grand Bay in Caracou, Granbra Lakabeke Bridge, and other areas will include approval of 15 projects under Rural Investment Fund. A total of $0.1 million is projected to be spent next year, and approximately 689 jobs are projected, of which 377 will be permanent jobs. Agriculture Feeder Roads Phase 2. This was an abandoned child, Mr. Speaker. Most of these roads have now been completed, and the remaining roads will be completed early next year. Government is also pleased, Mr. Speaker, to announce that confirmation for funding of Phase 3 of this important project has been received from the Kuwaiti Fund for Arab Economic Development and the OPEC Fund for International Development. We expect work to start in 2016, Mr. Speaker, and the total cost of this phase 3 is likely to be more than $60 million, Mr. Speaker. Regional Disaster and Vulnerability Reduction Program. Mr. Speaker, significant progress has been made towards the goal of building resilience to the impact of climate change and reducing vulnerability to natural disasters. The following projects have commenced, Mr. Speaker. People can see the work taking place. Sandals Tunnel Rockfall, the landslip at St. John's River and River Road, the landslip at Constantine Main Road, the landslip at Market Square, St. John's, the construction of water tanks for Nawassa. In addition, Mr. Speaker, contracts have been awarded for community infrastructure at Lassages and Bouchejou in St. George's, Cardrona Home for the Aged, St. Patrick's Anglican School. Finally, tenders, Mr. Speaker, have already been received for the following projects, which will commence early next year. And they are construction of the Hubble Bridge by the Lance, and followed by the Lance Bridge in St. John's. The Holy Cross RC School in Munich, and the OFID GOG School Rehabilitation Project, Mr. Speaker. Under that project, work on the Woburn Methodist and St. Mary's RC School in Lafayette will be completed next year. The St. Patrick's Road project will start next year, and $2.25 million is expected to be spent. Public-private partnership, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are several development projects for which government is pursuing public-private partnerships. One such is the Grenada Aviation Academy. A lot of work is taking place already. This project is on track with a commitment and support by 3 major institutions of higher education, namely Vaughan College of Aeronautics and Technology in Queens, New York, the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine, the Dublin Institute of Technology, 3 of them. Therefore, in May of this year, the above institutions signed a letter of intent with the government to construct and establish this aviation academy. The financing of this project will come through the Citizenship by Investment Program. This project will be executed in 4 phases and is charted to commence in the first quarter of 2016. Renewable energy and energy-efficient solutions for public buildings. The initial phase, Mr. Speaker, will be done with the Caribbean Development Bank. The commercialization of the tourism sites is also on the card. Invitation of expression of interest will soon be issued for those sites. Major private sector projects, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, investor confidence is no doubt on the rise. Over the past year, the GIDC has seen growing interest from local and foreign investors. In 2016, the following are some of the major projects which will continue or commence. 1, the Point at Piti Kalivini Resort is a three-stage development in which phase 1 will consist of 4 villas and 12 townhouses. The construction and finishes will be of a 5-star standard and will commence construction in the first quarter of 2016. The total cost for phase 1 is estimated at $16 million. Phase 2 and phase 3 will be $18 million and $21 million respectively. This project will, during the construction phase 1, provide for an estimated 100 jobs. The La Luna Beach Resort and Villa Phase 2 involves investment of $64 million to construct additional villas, art studio, among other amenities. Employment during construction is expected to be over 100 persons, while 45 persons are expected to be permanently employed once the project becomes operational. The Sanctuary in Carriacou will invest $40 million for the construction of additional 10 suites. Mr. Speaker, Clare Harbor Call Center, the employment which was just 403 at the end of 2013 is now 612, and another round of recruitment will commence by the end of the year, resulting in a further increase in serious employment for 2016. Marketing Center, which opened this year with just 60 persons, has now increased to 153 and plans to hire another additional 50, 60 persons early next year. Lay Point involves the establishment of a 5-star boutique hotel and resort, villa resort, encompassing 63 villas to yield 114 room keys. This project will be constructed on 30 acres of freehold lands at Hope, St. Andrews, and will be developed in 2 phases. It is expected that the first phase will yield a total of 20 room keys, which is expected to be completed within 18 months of the start of construction. Grain Fresh, which will use our fruits. A $12 million project is expected to be invested to establish a food-based product manufacturing plant at La Sagesse in St. David's. The project is expected to create employment for 15 persons, and equipment has already been ordered, Mr. Speaker. West Indies hospitality involves the acquisition and rehabilitation of Mount Edgemont Estate in a luxury retreat plantation house at Victoria St. Mark's. Employment is expected to be created 15 persons. That project is already begun. Solamente Villas, which is being implemented already, involves the reconfiguration of an existing villa into a 10-bedroom luxury boutique villa and retreat center at Lansapine, St. George's. The estimated project cost is $23.6 million and will employ about 20 persons. Koyaba Beach Resort involves the refurbishment and upgrading of current facility. The estimated investment cost will be $27.5 million, and the employment is projected at 25 persons additionally. Turbulence Grenada Limited involves the expansion of current operations at Clark's Court Bay Marina, which already is there, and extra permanent employment is expected to be created for 6 persons, and the scores of others would be employed during the construction phase, Mr. Speaker. Les Heliconium and day spa involves the expansion and refurbishment of accommodation facilities located at Point Celine, St. George's. This expansion involved the construction of 6 additional rooms to complement its 8 existing rooms. The project cost is estimated to be $1 million. The Grenada Marine involves the expansion and renovation of its current boatyard facility. The Caraco Development Marina, which is currently being constructed and involves the development of $13.9 million marina and dry dock facility at Tyrrell Bay, Caraco. Additional 10 persons will be employed, Mr. Speaker. The Silver Sands Resort Development Project, which is ongoing, which involves the construction of a luxury resort hotel located on the site of the former Silver Sands Hotel on Grandlands Beach, will continue to be constructed in 2016. It is estimated that over 175 persons will be employed throughout the construction phase, Mr. Speaker. Mount Cinnamon expansion, Mr. Speaker, which has already started, involves an additional 39 rooms. Already 25 persons are employed in construction. An additional 50 would be employed next year. Over the next 12 to 18 months, the occupancy of this property will be doubled, and 25 persons will have permanent employment. A sister to the Silver Sand project, the Riviera Hotel, is now being designed and will create further 100 jobs during construction next year. During this design phase, the investors have agreed to construct a new Cameroon Park nearby and upgrade a vendor's market and the basketball and tennis courts. Additional employment is expected to be created for approximately 260 Grenadians when the hotel becomes operational. Mr. Speaker, Grenada Resort Complex. This development will soon be, a design will soon be submitted, and environmental impact assessment and design documents will also go to the physical planning unit for a construction permit. As our first phase, an interpretive center will be built. The developer will select a contractor for the initial phase within the next 2 months. The next phase will likely include the flagship hotel, casino, residential apartments and villas, and associated amenities. Ebenezer, Grenada, has engaged one of the world's top master planners to commission a master plan for the Carnage. It's another major project. The company plans to purchase at least 3 buildings, which are in ready negotiation for, on the Carnage, and to renovate them for business opportunities. The company will complete all studies, including the EIA, for the free zone and finalize negotiations with the existing port to start operations of the free zone at the existing port. It is expected that at least 50 to 75 jobs will be created in construction and another 50 when operations commence. These private investment, Mr. Speaker, will lead to an additional 1,000 jobs, Mr. Speaker. This is great news for our country. Improving governance, Mr. Speaker. Financial regulation. The credit union sector continues to play an important role in the local economy. All credit unions in Grenada have now been subject to an on-site risk-based examination by GAFIN, and follow-up action is being taken where necessary. The United States has now confirmed that an extension for implementation of FATCA was granted, and implementation is now expected by September 30th, 2016. Consequently, all local financial institutions will not be subject to the 30% withholding requirement as mandated under the FATCA legislation. The government therefore remains, Mr. Speaker, committed to partnering with financial institutions during this implementation phase. Foreign affairs. Grenada is focused on a proactive foreign policy, Mr. Speaker, that raises Grenada's international profile and forges strategic partnerships and brings benefits to our citizens at home and abroad. The priorities for 2016 include mobilizing resources for technical assistance and scholarships and projects, effective promotion of friendly relations with traditional and new cooperation partners, particularly in Asia and the Middle East, labor and industrial relations. Government remains committed to promoting an atmosphere of harmonious industrial relations, health and safety in the workplace, and opportunities for decent work, including self-employment. The revised labor code is now before the Labor Advisory Board for consideration. This code is expected to be tabled in Parliament in 2016. Government will continue to identify job opportunities under the seasonal agricultural programs in Canada and for the cruise ship employment programs. Discussions have already started with the Grenada mission in Miami to pursue opportunities in the United States. Public sector modernization. In 2016, Mr. Speaker, the Department of Public Administration will give priority to modernization initiatives that support the homegrown program and helps build the new economy. These include pension reform, which all and sundry expect us to do, establishment of a public service training center, a leadership development program for middle managers, orientation program for public officers, and succession and management leadership development. National security. Mr. Speaker, significant progress has been made by the Royal Grenada Police Force in improving general response to reports and implementing measures to reduce crime. This has resulted in an increase in confiscation of illicit, dangerous weapons and improvement in crime detection. A modern immigration border management control system will be implemented for the enhancement of regional integration with respect to hassle-free travel using e-gates. This new system, Mr. Speaker, would also improve security to combat transnational criminality, terrorism, and human trafficking. Acknowledgements. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the government of people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, I wish to place on record our appreciation of all governments and organizations for the financial, economic, and technical assistance during the past year. A full listing of these can be seen in this statement at the back of our document. Mr. Speaker, I also want to acknowledge and applaud the sacrifices of all citizens of our country. I recognize also the ongoing contributions of the Committee of Social Partners and the Homegrown Program Monitoring Committee. I express also, Mr. Speaker, my deepest appreciation to my cabinet colleagues for their ongoing major sacrifices. I take this opportunity also to express commendations to the Permanent Secretary and the Deputy Permanent Secretary, the Accountant General and staff, the Chief Budget Officer, and members of the Small Budget Unit, the Head of Policy, the members of the Policy Unit, and the Macroeconomic Advisor, the Head of the Debt Management and staff, Head of Corporate Communications, the management team and staff of the Ministry of Finance, as well as the management and staff of the government printery. I thank also the Attorney General and his staff, and the Ministry of Legal Affairs, the Secretary to the Cabinet, the Permanent Secretaries and heads of non-ministerial departments, and all public servants who have come to the table. The Press Secretary and public officers who have contributed enormously to the preparation and delivery of this important budget. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank the Clerk of Parliament and his staff for their assistance in the preparations of today's presentation. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank you for permitting the use of technology to support the presentation here today. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, 33 months ago, a great cloud of hopelessness hung over this nation. That cloud, Mr. Speaker, is gone and will never return. Today, Mr. Speaker, the bright rays of hope are all in view. The seeds sown by our shared sacrifice are now beginning to yield a wonderful harvest. Fiscal turnaround, sustained economic growth, rising employment, and increasing opportunities. The presentation, Mr. Speaker, and the accompanying pictures are powerful stories of resilience, recovery, and results. Your hard-working government, Mr. Speaker, is delivering. So when we spoke earlier about over 3,500 new jobs being created, we were not just reporting a number as some people speak to all the time. It's not about numbers. We are speaking, Mr. Speaker, about real people whose lives have been impacted positively. We are keenly aware, Mr. Speaker, that still more people await delivery. But as we have said, we will deliver. And it is not a mere idle slogan for construction worker in Paradise, St. Andrews, who 4 years ago, because the job sites had become idle, was in trouble with his mortgage. He has since found work and is back on schedule with his mortgage. He doesn't losing his house and his family anymore. For the temporary teacher who has been in the system in the last 5 years and more, and is only just able to access a loan to build a house because she is now regularized. For the over 100 workers who are employed at the Silver Sands Resort already, and more coming, or the hundreds of trained young people at Clear Harbor and Sandal Sales and Marketing Center, and the many others from River Sally in the north to Grandans Valley in the south, who are working, looking for work and finding work, Mr. Speaker, your hard-working government is delivering. For the public servants whose paychecks are now on time, not 10 days in the new month. For the small contractors who are finally getting paid, and many suppliers who finally receiving payments for services provided by the previous government, your hard-working government is delivering. For the doctors at the General Hospital who, after a hard day's work serving our people, can now relax in more comfortable quarters. For the long-suffering unemployed nurse, soon will finally find a way to practice a profession. For the current or future patient who can now rest assured that government is now working overtime to ensure that basic medications are provided and in regular supply. Your hard-working government is delivering. Mr. Speaker, unlike others who talk less, who talk a lot, Mr. Speaker, and do nothing, we talk less. In fact, we hardly talk. That's our problem. But we're doing a lot, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, it is better to have a heart with fewer words than many words without a heart. Who the cap fit, let it fit. For the brilliant young people from Resource, Union or Maran who are now studying in Morocco or China or Cuba, for whom those opportunities would not have been possible otherwise. For the little boy Harry in Dudmar St. David's, who can now attend school regularly because of the transportation and uniform allowance that he is receiving. Your hard-working government is delivering. For the relocated residents of Soubise, who are no longer compelled to feel vulnerable and exposed to rising sea levels, your hard-working government is delivering. For the scores of small business people who, because of the hand up through the expanded Small Business Assistance Program, that do not have to accept handouts anymore. And for all these people and more, these are not just the much needed paychecks. They have had their dignity restored. For the 3,000 young people and more this year that now have greater skills and greater self-esteem and hope, they have had the trajectory of their lives change through participation in the Money program. They understand, Mr. Speaker, that as difficult as today is, these are far better times than yesterday, Mr. Speaker. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, they can hope for a better tomorrow. In this period of growth, our strongest currency is hope. That's why, Mr. Speaker, we can say today that hope lives and more hope is on the way. Your hard-working government is delivering. Mr. Speaker, as a nation, we have faced great odds, but we have made great strides. And we are fortified by the words of the Holy Scriptures found in Romans 8, chapter 8, verse 37, and I quote, "Despite all these things, overwhelming victory is through Christ who loved us," unquote. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are marching on, determined to do better to the lives of everyone. Our faith has sustained us, and hope lives. God bless the beautiful people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Peterborough.
Well, we've just had the budget presentation 2016 by the Minister of Finance himself, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, in excess of $1 billion.